Morning, fellow zombies. Are we alive yet? Are we awake yet? Are we emotionally screwed up and sleep deprived? Because I sure as hell am. Or am I emotionally deprived and sleep screwed up? That too. This is your zombie out here. We were John C. of Roseman, California. It's 3:56 in the morning, West Coast time. It's still the 21st, is it? Hmm. Hadn't changed yet. Okay. 21st of March, 2024. I'm not even live or awake yet. Certain things on YouTube would get me ticked off enough. Certain topics on there, and I had to just ask myself, why the hell am I watching this crap in the first place? Some sociologist is trying to get his book out there to tell people, look at discrepancies between the poor and the rich as they're getting mental health. And I'm scratching my head, and I'm seeing this one clinical psychologist, or I think she calls herself that one, and she's reading this. Oh, this is fascinating. This is fascinating. And I'm thinking to myself, oh great, they're going to kill our white lab codes. They look at the numbers and they go crazy and gaga over numbers. One of them actually had been out there in the system, or actually dealing with people one-to-one basis. The other guy is dealing with students at a college. That's about it. Has he ever dealt with a homeless one by one? Maybe in his individual time in New York. I just barely got into the audio before getting sick to my stomach on this damn crap. Bean counters. That's what I consider sociology is bean counters. You don't know a problem until you're in the problem. Then maybe you can try to drown your way through it. He's talking about how rich people get different treatment than the poor people do. Has he ever been in a county system? Has he ever been poor? Has he ever been through the GR system? Has he ever been in a system where he's that disparaged? I mean, he can look at the damn numbers, but numbers don't tell you shit. It's a different mindset. It's a different attitude. It's different altogether. If you got the rich and you got the wealth and you're still working on that, but you haven't been on the downside of life, don't tell me what the downside of life is unless you've already crawled out of the damn gutter and got back into society. And this society's already screwed up right now as it is. We got too many programs out there trying to figure out what they want and how to treat the people who have mental illness one way or another. But they're looking at the people on the street, but they're not seeing the people on the street. It's not the it's not the ones going. It's the ones that are casually walking by you that may or may not have it that you don't even know. They get triggered left and right by one thing or another. We all got our own damn neurosis. We all got our own mental illness one way or another. Either it's light or severe. I grew up with the damn thing and nobody ever caught the damn thing. It was just too much of a, they looked at me and says, grow up, be tough, be a man, be this, be that. So I was going through physiological pains. You're a kid, you get toughen up because you get scars and have to promote them. Saying, look how many scars I got in my life. It's not the physical scars that also get you. It's the mental health scars that get you. It's the things that we have to keep toughening ourselves up left and right. And unfortunately, sometimes those scars build up in our head. With the memories. I talk about my own personal experience growing up. My brother was growing up with mental health. And he didn't even realize it until it was almost too late. Some school doctor looked at him and actually looked at my brother and saw some imagery that was disturbing to him. He did some of this imagery in classrooms at one time when he was a kid. And it got passed around to a point where my mother's attention got, oh my God, he was, yeah. So they stuck him in a program over at UCLA when they were just getting it started. He was among other students. And he spent, I'm not going to say how much time, but he spent time over there. And he developed a relationship with a couple of administrators and therapists over there. In fact, decades later, me and my brother went over to UCLA during a book fair, went over to the institute, and I finally met the infamous Minkus. I thought he was infamous. But to my brother, he was famous and he was loved. Because Pincus was one of those guys that actually helped my brother out when my brother needed it the most. He retired, passed on. But I was grateful that I actually met this guy who made a difference in my brother's life. There was another guy out there who was very young and energetic. And my brother ran into him in his adulthood. And once in a great while, they wouldn't be still in communication. Past and they were completely crossed entirely all the time in adulthood. But during the youth, yeah, they were. But he was not somebody at the Institute. It was somebody down in my brother's life that the guy made a difference in my brother's life. And there was a few other people that made differences in my brother's life. See, I hear all these damn fancy PhDs out there trying to get their names in the books out there. Probably because they want to get their street creds among the academia. And on the lower end, they really couldn't care less about the damn thing because they're on a day-to-day survival living. How are they going to sleep? How are they going to eat? Do they have enough clean clothes to wear? Can they get clean clothes to wear? Okay, then what else? Step by step by step by step. Sometimes the therapists who actually work with them, I imagine. Because I know sometimes mine would work with me on some occasion. Just to see how the hell I'm doing. Now, listening to educated idiots with white lab coats who are trying to get their doctor's degree in books, uh, they've got their own viewpoint. They've got their own pie in the sky, and they got their own um, Mount Olympus versus us commoners down on the ground trying to deal with a day-by-day strife. I don't think they understand about that one unless they've already lived through it, lived through the dirt. And not just looking for academia information. I'm talking about just living and existing in survival. Because unless you've been through it and you're going up in the system, but you've already got your bases grounded. Okay, you're scratching your heads on this one. I probably not. Okay. If you come from the bottom up, basically dirt poor, you fought your way up in the system. But then at the point, you're probably getting information about the system subconsciously, storing it in there. So maybe that's going to help you out with a dissertation or two or college papers. You start off in the lower end, or maybe you got yourself a scholarship going into the higher classes, and then you start building it up. Hopefully, if you've gained enough information about what it was like living in that kind of environment, that would help you, and that would get you street cred among the street for those who've understood the problem. For those politicians and academians who haven't been through that, have been privileged enough to get through school grants and school loans, that's one thing. But to go through the dirt poor and get yourself up, I'll have respect for that one. I'll have respect for those kind of people because if they have that kind of perspective, what it's like to deal with the lower ends instead of the upper class and say, oh, there's a discrepancy, there's disparagement. Yeah, because people don't understand unless you've been through it already. See, that's the thing I don't get with these books out there. Going to teach us something. Life teaches you something. Experiences teach you something. How about this? Fall from grace. Fall from Mount Olympus down to the commoner people and live among the commoner people and see how they live. And then maybe you can understand what's the difference between the Mount Olympus God versus regular life Joe scratching a living and trying to deal with everything else down below. All the little monsters we have, all the bigger monsters we have. And we look at everybody else and see monsters there. Well, how did you see a monster? Were you seeing a two-legged person over there? Well, I don't know. Is he a monster or is he a living person? Use the experience of the Greek tragedies or probably the TV series. I used to love this show like crazy. Hercules. That was on Channel 5 out here in the West Coast, along with Xena. But they are enhanced people, I would say. Hercules in the mythology was the son Shit. I know a son. Let's see, son of Zeus, and a mother who was mortal. Don't ask me to get me on the names on this one. I should study more about my Greek heroes and the stories more and more. But basically, there was a son created, a half mortal, a partial deity. Had the strength of a god, but he was still mortal. And the mortal task of Hercules was to do all these things. Stories will tell you tragedies about it. Television will show you fantasy about it. The incredible journeys of Hercules as he's living and dealing with the gods above and then dealing with the monsters down below. And sometimes it's not just the creatures that you would see. It's not the computer-generated creatures. It was the human monsters, the attitudes, the behaviors, the classes, the viewpoints. And I guess in one aspect, a sociologist would look at the numbers about how people are being treated or mistreated or not treated at all. Just by looking at numbers and judging it by that way without living among the mortals to see how the numbers are being generated and what the numbers mean down to a single digit. I'm saying this because I can see monsters walking on two legs. And I can also look in the mirror and see a monster in the mirror. And yet I can see myself in an image. I can look at my computer screen right here and see an image of a human being. In one aspect, I can probably see a Greek mythology character in life. I could probably see a Greek so-called monster. Maybe something with tentacles or scales or something like that with fingernails pointing out and go, I'm going to do something dastardly. And sometimes those monsters were just creatures, just living and dealing and surviving. But no, it's the two-legged ones you really had to watch out for. It's because of the decisions and the morals they had in them, what they were growing up with. Were they growing up with the attitude of saying that I'm more special than you are, and therefore I'm going to mistreat you because I. And I don't think this guy's even bought that one anyway. I mean, the video I was responding to is sociologist exposes inequalities between rich and poor mental health treatment. Oh, good Lord. What the hell is that shit? If you're crazy, if you're deemed crazy. The problem is, I look at society and we're all freaking nuts. What's so redeemable or irredeemable? It's how we treat people, and unfortunately, how we are being treated. And if we're supposed to be getting the help necessary. Now, if you're just a guy stuck on the street, just got tossed out by circumstances beyond his control, he's fighting for survival left and right, trying to grab a scrap of bread from food giveaways. You know, not many people will actually give out a warm hand when it comes down for those kind of people because they're considered lowlifes. They're considered druggies, mental health. But not many of them are like that. The rest of them are just people struggling with survival. Or how about they already had mental illness happening in their family that they hadn't been diagnosed or been hidden. Or if they have been diagnosed, maybe they're off their medications or something. And then you walk in the street and then you'll probably see them go blah, 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 blah. But the ones I know that have the mental health are the ones keeping it together. The ones are keeping it together, trying to keep it quiet. And in the middle of the night, trying to keep from screaming their asses off. The voices in the head. Until you hear those damn things screaming off, you don't know. But they could be fine, looking fine during the daytime. You think they're upstanding normal society. And in the middle of the night, ah! What do you think about the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? Or the Wolfman? Two different creatures, right? Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, a respected chemist. They still had a darker side inside of them. These are the gothic tales we would hear back in the, what was it, 1900s, coming out there to scare the crap out of people in the 20th century. We're reading this stuff, and we're laughing at the damn shit. We're watching the movies, but really they're showing our mirrors. They're showing mirror images of how people are towards each other. We talk about it in 12-step meetings a great deal, but they don't use classical literature as much unless they've already been exposed to classical literature to make the connections. We only know about the real life connections. The real life connections is we also talk about the Frankenstein situation, the creature. Now, in Mary Shelley's book, if I'm not mistaken on that one there, give me a second. I really got to get me a haircut. Anyway, Mary Shelley's book, I think back in the 1800s, late 1800s, was a hell of a read because they were getting into Gothic. They were getting into creatures of the night. What she was talking about is the subconscious nature of probably humanity, based in the form of our fears, our phobias, our dreams, and coming out in literature just to read them. They're like, oh, what a cute story. What a bet. You're talking about your psychosis right there. You're talking about your subconscious right there. I didn't need to have a doctor in psychology to understand that crap. I just have real life just to scare the crap out of me on that one. And then I started reading about it. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. The monsters come out. The id comes out. To have a play, have a party. And you don't know whether or not you're alive or awake. Dr. Jekyll, when he did this chemical treatment here, he brought out the subconscious and submerged the conscious level. And therefore, the monster came out. You couldn't tell in the book of Prometheus, Man Unbound, because what they were talking about is Dr. Jekyll, not Dr. Jekyll, we were talking about Dr. Frankenstein. A guy who turns out in a well-known and adjusted lifestyle, but he's got this darker nature inside of him he's got to examine. So with his chemicals and other treatments, he patches together a body, pumps it full of chemicals, and it's supposed to be the chemicals that are supposed to bring the life to this mismatched patchwork here. And then how it was treated and mistreated. And at the end, who was more human? The guy trying to destroy his creation, or the creation still trying to understand man and trying to survive and live, and he outlives the doctor somehow in the story. But reading the book and understanding the story about how this creature lived and existed, you feel more sorry for the damn creature than you do about the scientist, because the scientist turns out to be a lunatic. And everybody else around him seems to be a lunatic, depending upon our own viewpoint. Who was a monster and who wasn't? When you're looking at an alcoholic or a drug user, chemically addicted to both things, it brings out, hey, excuse me, can you, thank you, can you, thank you. Just, yeah, I got a problem with bugs on a constant basis. I don't like death as much, but I deal with it on a constant basis. It's a distraction, but a representation. Since I've been talking about this thing on an academic level on my own, I'm dealing with reality check right now as it is, bugs all around, and I'm dealing with it on a constant thing. I'm dealing with life on life's terms here. Sometimes I don't like it, and other times I have to deal with it and cope with it. But dealing with that, and then you're dealing with the academic and saying, we must destroy, we must help, we must analyze, we must. Yeah, for some of those people are actually not adjusted in society's terms. Yeah, we must get them adjusted and treated because society's going to look at them as thinking, okay, we got to lock them up. And sometimes I quite agree that we all need to be locked up. But the problem is, when I'm looking at people, the crazy people may be crazy, but it's the same people or even worse. The decisions that we make, decisions that we come upon, looking at each other and thinking whether or not we're sane or not. We're not thinking that in a conscious level. We're thinking that in a subconscious level. We're judging people left and right, whether or not, if you're one of us or you're not one of us. You probably think I'm going crazy at this point. And sometimes I thought I'm going crazy. Or maybe I am going crazy. But depending upon society's rules and regulations and understanding these days. I'm hearing a sociologist trying to get his bones in his books and trying to get his street creds going. I think this guy's like, no, you hadn't been there. You don't understand it. And then I hear a psychologist online saying, well, I understand. I appreciate the book. I'm thinking, no, you don't understand it either because you hadn't been there, girl. No. No, you've seen the treatment, but you hadn't been there. See, you got to see them because you don't see them. The question, oh, well, how do you see them? Because you got to be there. Well, I've been treating them. No, 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 you're not there, girl. When you keep the elitism going on, when you hadn't been living in them, when you haven't lived among the muck and mire and see how the changes do, what they work upon people left and right. It's not just being poor, it's also being rich. Doesn't matter what kind of discrepancy we got. We're all screwed up in the head, depending upon conditions, lifestyles, experiences. Sometimes maybe genetics, but sometimes life throws you a lot of curves and you got to adjust to it accordingly. But sometimes you may be born in a situation that you have no control of, both physically and mentally. And yeah, sometimes the conditions are not the greatest when you're living in the poor, but maybe somewhere in there you're still looking and still trying to understand your humanity, being human, and understanding what values are compared to what the other values you see beyond. Pie in the sky, I know. Pie in the sky. Was I born in that way? Well, round two for a video, I guess. So, life story again. How to drive people nuts.